Theoretically, yes, but I may close this because I just wanted the chat. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today?
Hey!
I was going to say, here we have Lottie, but I'm sure that you know her face. And today, officially, Hannah is no longer with us. She's currently with her new baby, so I will be hosting henceforth. But today, Lottie is going to join me for the whole time so we can talk about the development roadmap and all sorts of production questions and things like that to get us started and to get everybody thinking about Sunless Skies and what's coming next, which I'm sure everybody will be excited about.
Yeah.
It's nice to see many familiar names in here as well.
I don't know anyone. I need to get better at identifying.
It's also fun and tricky to get used to the delay, which will be fun.
I mean, am I responding like an idiot to these things?
No. I think it eventually works itself out, but it is kind of strange having sat behind it, like how much of a gap there actually is.
Yeah.
Especially,
I've watched you guys like when I've not been on the chat and been like, respond!
Yes.
But yeah, I guess.
Especially when you can hear like, I think there was one episode where Hannah and Liam were in here together and you could hear them laugh like really, really loud about something.
Yes.
And then 5 minutes later, yeah. But it's fine. And I'm sure that they don't mind putting up with us being a little delayed or staring awkwardly at the camera at the wrong time. So it's good.
It is a Friday after all.
Yes. So I thought that now that we've said all the introductions and everything, and Chris is sitting in the audience waiting to answer questions, that it would be good to just start with what a producer does. Like, what is your role? People may know already, but just like a little summary.
Well, producers get asked that a lot, actually, like even in the industry, because it varies a lot depending on the company you're in. Mm-hmm. So you get lots of different types of producer. Their basic role is to get stuff done. I appreciate my censorship there. Game dev tends to be full of very creative people wanting to do the best thing they possibly can, which is wonderful. But you need somebody to have an eye on what is actually possible. And once you've decided what's possible based on like the money that you have and the time that you have, you need someone to continue thinking about like the big picture, so people can focus on the specifics. Mm-hmm. So my job is basically to make everyone's life as easy as possible by removing the burden of having to worry about the whole, and allowing them to focus on doing what they do best, which is, you know, dependent on their specialisms, like to do wonderful art or to do wonderful programming or to write beautiful stories. And they can rely on me to say, this is going to be a problem, or I'd like you to do this first, because this will depend on someone else being able to do their work. And they don't have to think about the jigsaw piece that they are. Like, I'm the one saying, put the jigsaw there, do the jigsaw, go to bed, it's all good.
Right. So you're like a jigsaw master and also a problem solver.
I do actually really love jigsaws.
Okay, so that this all comes together then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. I'm sure plenty of the other devs do the math part anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a calculator on my phone. It's fine.
Perfect. So in the roadmap, which you helped me on to try to make sense, because it was a lot of information for you guys. Yeah. Even though it only goes up to early access right now, it's still a lot.
We have the whole thing though.
Yes, very true. So how, I know this is a big question, but how does game development work maybe specifically for us? Like, what do we do? We mentioned sprints, so maybe start there in regards to how a schedule works for us.
Okay, so I think the biggest thing to say is that contrary to most people's like assumption, game dev is iterative, which means that you don't just sit down and think, this is a plan for the whole game, this is exactly how it's going to be, and now we just go and do the thing. Like that's a type of management called waterfall development, which basically means that you plan it all ahead in advance. Yeah. But game dev and any software dev really doesn't work like that. Because what's kind of fun about our job is like we don't really know what we can do. People say, wouldn't it be cool if, for example, and then people go away and see if they can make that happen. So you get like massive technological advancements like VR, because somebody said, wouldn't it be cool if I could put on a hat and pretend that I was in a different world, which you don't get if you're planning like basically anything else. So the way that it has to work is that you have a plan and you have a set like period of time when you go and see if that plan is possible. Yeah. And then what usually happens is you can do like 80% of it, and then you can you can't do the 20%, but that's cool because doing the 80% of it has given you another idea which will make you go over here, and then you do another little like cycle of can we do what we want to do here and investigative stuff, and it takes you there. And that means if you work in an iterative way that you end up kind of roughly where you want to. If you have this like basic plan of like I want to make, for example, a spiritual sequel to Sunless Sea, you don't have to sort of say and it will have this exact plot and it will do this exact thing, because that like if you try that you will fail and it will cost you extra time and extra money and you'll be really sad.
Definitely.
So everyone in game development really works in what we call agile, which is exactly this. It's iterative cycles of development where you work in so-called sprints, which are my babies.
Or springs, as I type in every development blog.
We don't work in springs. Spring is rubbish, as you can tell by the jumper. You're obviously not wearing a jumper because you're crazy American.
I'm thinking tropical today. It's totally fine.
You're living the fake life.
Yes.
It's basically snow outside. We literally have a Christmas plant over there that is doing well.
I was going to say thriving, yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, so sprints are 2-week sprints, like 2-week sections of time, and that's the norm for agile game development. Most people work in 2-week sprints, but it can really be any time. And this is a good period of time because it allows us to get stuck into stuff without getting too stuck in, so we don't waste time and end up having to go back and redo work later on.
Right. Like it would be madness to try to fit all the movement for like the playership into one sprint.
Exactly, but
presumably.
Yeah, but it's kind of a mix of things. Like it's probably technically possible.
Yeah.
But then once we've done all the movement and like spent all our resource checking out movement, we wouldn't have time later on to go and like change it based on how the players felt about it. So obviously a really important thing is that you guys get to have a look at our game as soon as possible, so we can work out if the game is achieving what we want it to achieve, if it's fun, if it functionally works. So we want to basically give the smallest amount of a thing as like a little amuse-bouche, and then see if people like it, and if they do, we'll make a big souffle. But if they don't, then we'll be like, that we didn't mean that. Here's another starter. Try this instead.
Definitely.
So it's all in terms of hors d'oeuvres.
And we even did like pre-production as well. So during that time, our devs tested different things that they might want to try out to even get a better idea of that like skeletal structure you just surmised about how the whole game will fit together. Because obviously you need some sort of schedule or plan, hence we have the development roadmap.
Exactly.
In general.
Exactly.
And then what sort of happens for people that don't know, like from sprint to sprint, like we've said things like sprint reviews, we obviously have this plan that people, presumably the dev team, know about. Like how does it go from sprint to sprint?
So we end up with, I sort of plan out like for the whole project based on how long we have and how much money we have and what we want to achieve. I sort of plan out like I think this will happen in this month and this will happen in that month, and then once we've got that plan and everyone's happy with it, I'll break it down into actual specific things for people to do within specific time periods. And once we've got that, then I can sprint them. And that means basically that I put a bunch of tasks into one sprint with specific dates, and I make sure that nobody has like loads of work to do in one sprint and no one has like nothing to do in one sprint. I aim to make it nice but productive,
challenging.
And then every Monday, not every Monday, on a Monday we will start that sprint. So people will look at a particular list of tasks and they will start working through them. For the next 2 weeks, obviously I do my very best to keep people moving and make sure that nobody runs into any blockers, which for people who aren't in development basically means like anything that will stop you being able to do the stuff that I want you to do. And that could mean anything. It could be like, oh, there's an extra bit of tech work that we need before this story can be written, or it could be that we need to buy this thing before we can do that thing, or it could be that someone's like magically got married and we have to give them time off.
That would be very exciting for a sprint.
It would be exciting, but I also hate them because they ruin my plan.
Thankfully, that's not my job, bit. So
to marry people.
Well, no, to deal with once people get married.
Yeah,
unexpectedly in the middle of a sprint.
But you probably are one of the matchmakers in the studio, so.
Yes, but we'll keep the secrets on the down low.
Okay.
And specifically, now I've lost my train of thought because you've got me thinking about secret marriages.
Well, I was going to say about sprint reviews.
Yes.
We haven't defined them already.
Yeah.
At the end of each sprint, I think it's very important that all the different pieces like like step back and have a look at how everything's fitting together. So it'd be very easy, for example, for our writers to only ever think about writing, and that's great because they're really good at writing and like everyone, fantastic. But I think it's a lot healthier for them to actually see the game as it's being built around them, because it's not just stories, it's a game. And equally, you know, my technical developers could just be thinking about code all the time, but I don't want them to think about that. I want them to think about how their code is going to enable the user to experience the game. So at the end of each sprint, we all get together in a room in our office and present what people have been working on. Now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like shiny and impressive. It's literally just to give people an update on where things are. So that tends to mean that we get some snapshots of Unity in progress tech work. We get a summary, usually from Chris, of kind of the themes and stuff that people are working on. We're not talking about Secret Marriage. I'm sorry.
You've started something.
I know, I'm not remotely sorry. And yeah, it's just a kind of to make people meet and understand where the whole project is, and then they go away and focus on the detail again.
For me, that's one of my favorite bits, because that's when I actually get to see what's being done on the game, because even though we're in the same office, we have two slightly different rooms, and I am in the non-development side of the room. So
The losers.
It's clearly the best room. It's just that we don't have any windows or brick wall as the other room does.
You just described it in such a horrible dystopian way. It's great. We just don't have any way to get out.
It's fine. It's totally fine. It's where marketing belongs.
Oh, no.
But the sprint reviews are awesome, because that's when we get to all ooh and ah over the different things. Like, it was really cool, as I'm sure you guys agree, when Liam showed us the locomotive in motion and its little turning, and it made us all want to do like drift racing with locomotives.
Yeah, and like skywriting.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very cool.
So from that perspective, I think, like you said, it's good for everybody in the office, regardless of what team they come from, to get a broad picture of where the game is at in general.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why we like to share it with you guys and all these development blogs too, because then we start to get feedback even before we go into early access, which is good too.
Exactly.
I knew you were going to ask that about judgments. Oh man. We'll see. But if it's secret, then I can't tell you now. So I think we're fine. Also, if you guys have any questions while we go through this, please shout out, because Lottie and I could talk for ages about development, but I'm sure you guys have questions about, you know, Sunless Skies and like specifically, or development in general, or what a producer does. So if you have any, shout them out. Preferably if you @Failbetter when you shout them out, so we can see them nice, big, and bold on the ginormous TV screen we have in front of us. But yeah, questions always welcome, unless they're about secret marriages.
Yeah, Chris can do like the management in channel.
Indeed. Well, he's joining in. So
I know, exactly. I mean, he's making a rod for his own back. He's a
that's true. It would be his deal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's promised you that now. It's his fault.
It's secret, so I can't tell you which judgment I would secretly marry. But I do have a question for you. Do we have any tools? How do you keep track of all of this ridiculous planning that you've done for the next like year, more than a year?
So like, for such an important thing, it's surprising that there's like not really anything that's like the go-to piece of software that people use.
I'm pretty sure that's called the Post-it note, but yes.
Yeah. Post-it notes are bloody great. But no, we're testing something out at the minute internally. We used to use what a lot of producers in small indie dev studios use, which is the wonderful Google spreadsheet.
Yep.
Which is sounds super basic, but it's super customizable, and like all producers will nerd out about it, and they all like wear like little like I love Excel, I love Google spreadsheets.
I know that's you, so.
So that's really great in lots of ways, just because it's so flexible. But we've recently been trialing out a super colorful different piece of software called Hack and Plan, which I have desperately tried to get everyone excited about in studio, and you can imagine how well that went down. But it is great, and I think we'll end up switching to that. And basically that's a really simple kind of card-based system, so you can have loads of information, but it's presented quite simply, so no one's like overwhelmed with loads of text or loads of documents. So yeah, I think it's a keeper.
I think it's been working well too. I don't use it as much as the development team.
No, although I keep trying to be like marketing.
But it does look very snazzy, and I do use it to see where development is on different topics, that I can stay aware of when things are being released or how far away they are and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I think that's good too.
We've thrown open the doors of production to you.
And you do also have like a giant whiteboard calendar as
I
well.
do.
So you must have a few different ways of keeping track of everything. But for the most part, it's like hack and plan.
Yeah, and like the whiteboard that I have is primarily for me to like be aware of upcoming milestones, because it's easy to get lost in amongst lots of detail. And as I said, like one of the producer's main aims is to keep the big picture in focus. So I need to not forget in the middle of a crisis. For example, if we're like a month away from launching an early access or something like that.
Yep.
Because if I'm not remembering that, no one else is going to be, and then we'll arrive screeching in a car of flames, and it will be bad. So
Fingers crossed.
it's all going to be fine.
Do you think that there's any way that we do our development planning that's slightly different or like specific to our games? Because, for example, I would imagine most game studios, let alone indie studios, don't have a full team of in-house writers.
Yeah.
So is like that slightly more difficult, or are there more unique ways that we do scheduling than other studios?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are like content led in a way that most studios aren't, as you say, because like it's our big USP. Like, everyone loves our writing. But it's not like that's the first thing we do. Art is a big consideration. I think that's primarily because we only have one resource.
Yes.
So obviously he'll need a lot of lead up time. Whereas if we had like a 10 strong art team, like they could get stuff done like pretty like nippily.
Yeah.
And Paul is really quick, but like there's just so much to do.
Yeah, like an entire game.
I mean, it's crazy. Like he's a total phenomenon. So we have to be quite careful about that. And we can also, it's also quite weird because like he's a department of one.
Yes.
So he can sort of, and he's a CEO. So try telling him to like, don't do it that way. You're like, okay, no, you can do it that way, sir. Yes. So he like often does things very flexibly, which is really wonderful for agile development, as I said, because it's all about being flexible.
Yep.
So I think that's quite unusual as well. I don't know. I think development works differently for each studio because it totally depends on like what's best for those people, and it really is about the people, not about like what you're trying to achieve. Because for example, you could have a bunch of people who like hate like typing stuff, and all they want to do is like have like meetings face to face, and then go away and do stuff. Or you could have people who are like all working from different like parts of the world, in which case you'd have to work out time difference things. So it really just depends on the team, I think.
Cool. Hello, new people that have joined us.
Ramshackle Thoughts is a great name.
It is. We wave to you as well. And Chris, you're very sweet.
Aw, thanks, Chris.
Is there anything that you wish you knew when you started out in production? Like, was there ever like an aha moment, or like something that you wish you had kept in mind in your younger little new...
My more innocent days.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, you know how my production started, which was pretty crazy and a story for not now. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of you have to fight with yourself. Everyone knows that the industry is big on like not feeling good about yourself a lot of the time, because people aren't very sure like if they're doing a good job, and it's a thing called imposter syndrome, if nobody's heard that phrase before. It's a really well-known like phenomena in this industry, and possibly others, I'm not sure. And it basically means that you feel like you're not actually equipped to do the job that you're doing. I think because games dev does feel like very informal and really fun, so a lot of people come to it from other jobs, and like it's quite rare to have been like trained to be a specific game thing.
Yeah. Although maybe in the future it won't be as much of a problem as more people do actually like get specifically trained into game development. But
yeah, maybe.
But a lot of us have, like Lottie said, come from totally different jobs, or it's like a passion project and you've left your job to start a studio or whatever.
And this tends to mean that, like, you worry about what you're doing. You're not sure that you're doing the right thing. So you have to be nice to game developers always. But in production, like when something's finished, if you've done a really good job, like no one knows that you're there.
Yeah.
If people know that you're there, there's something gone wrong with the project. So you have to like train yourself to feel not like totally incidental. Because I think if producers weren't there, there would be problems. I would like to think, because otherwise I won't have a job. So that's something that I think I would have liked to tell myself when I just started.
I think that's a good one.
And also that everyone will hate you, but it's fine. Nobody likes producers. People think that we're the meanies, and we're not.
You do prod people a lot, to be fair.
I do, but like with like feather and dust and glitter.
Sparkles, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's good.
I think so. Question number one that somebody has asked while we were chatting away: what happened to the new art person? they're still coming. They just haven't arrived yet. So I'm sure that we'll do some sort of announcement, or even maybe have them on the podcast once they've settled in.
For whom, sorry?
The new art person. Somebody said, what has
can we
happened
say
to them?
Who they are?
I don't know.
He's a man called Toby. I'm saying it. I'm not going to tell you who like his last name is or anything, but he's super great.
You can get the exclusive here.
We are extremely excited about him joining us.
Yes,
so
and
we'll
I'm sure
definitely do,
Paul
like, an intro.
is excited as well.
Yeah.
To now not be a solo man department.
Yeah.
So that'd be pretty
Solo
cool.
man.
Sounded a bit
It's Paul's
superhero.
nickname in the studio.
I'll make a gift of that later. So the other question we have is very appropriate. So how do marketing and production work together? That's a great question, specifically for this podcast, because I represent marketing and Lottie represents production. And it probably does get mixed up in the industry sometimes, mostly if it's a really small studio and you probably have people wearing many hats. Have you ever heard of
I think both marketing and production has like more of an operations role than other game development positions. So I can see why that would kind of merge in a very small studio. But like our roles are super different.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I think the best way to work with each other is like just to keep talking. Like, I know that sounds really lame, but like obviously you need to know when something is going to get done and going to be released, so you can like tell people about it and get them excited and make sure that everything's in place for like launches and things. And obviously what I want to know is when you need stuff by, so I can like tell you if there's a problem and like prioritize stuff so we get you the stuff that you need by the dates that you need it. And I think historically like marketing has been treated quite badly by the industry. I think it's been considered like incidental. So often I imagine you're like knocking on the door
Or
being
really
like, "Please
horrible."
tell me. Or really horrible. Yeah, no one likes you either.
Yeah,
Like,
it's even worse,
tough.
I think, than like from outside the industry, maybe not inside the industry.
Yeah.
Because when games started, obviously marketing was mostly done by all the public. I've just forgotten the word. How does that happen?
All the what?
all the people publisher. There we go. It's Friday and I'm very tired. Traditionally, like all the marketing would have been done by publishers who are really big, like corporations with lots of money who probably aren't very close to the studio.
Yeah.
And therefore have a huge communication gap, which is thankfully not what we have, because I just go into the other room and shout at Lottie and she tells me things.
Yeah.
Sometimes. We both have calendars, and like I said previously, I often check in on Lottie's scheduling that she's done for all the sprints. And if I ever need to know more detail about something, then I would ask you personally. Specifically, I think it's helpful to have this relationship because I need somebody to translate to what happens from tech.
Right, yeah.
Because sometimes it's so out of my sphere of like awareness
Yeah.
that I need somebody to fill me in on why we're even doing A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And it's good to have a producer as opposed to me going directly to the developer.
Yeah.
Because they may tell me in a way that I would still need translated. Because sometimes they say things very technically and it's hard for me to understand. But Lottie has a good overview of what's happening throughout the project, which is helpful.
That is one of the key skills, I think, of like a producer or someone in production. Like, I think the worst producers are the people who think that they can do the jobs of the people that they're like organizing, because then you'd go in and be like, why don't you do it like that? Have you considered this? And the person would be like, yes, I have. I'm really good at this. Shut up. So you have to like tread the line between like having enough information and experience to understand what they mean and the relevance of it, and like, you know, to learn and be able to understand, for example, tech speak, without being like, I know all about this, so I'm going to tell you what to do. Because you always need to listen to the specialists. Like, you're not there to tell them what to do. You're there to like, enable them to do the best job that they can. And this is kind of how it works with the development roadmap, right? Like, you know, you come to the sprint reviews and you see all the exciting things that we're working on, and everyone gets very enthused in that, which is cool. And then you come away and say, like, here's my write-up. And I go, like, I don't understand what that means. And this is very boring, but we can say this, and yada, yada. So I think it works quite well.
Exactly. And speaking of like a project that we did very close together, that roadmap, it required both of a huge amount of our mental capacities, I think, because we had to make sure that it was understandable to people that don't know a lot about game design and stuff as well. And also we can't tell you all the cool things because then you'd be sad when the game came out because you knew them already. So it was very tricky to fine tune everything and also to lay it out in a way that wasn't just like, here's all the information.
Yeah, exactly.
Which can be overwhelming as well.
Yeah.
And then there was a question too, wasn't there?
Yeah. How much does open development mess about with what order you make things in? It's a big pain.
I was going to say, I can't wait to hear your answer about this.
It's a really wonderful it's a really wonderful thing. I'm really pleased that we do it. I think it's really important, particularly with us, that we incorporate our community, because you guys like know our game so well, and we have a wonderful relationship with you, and like it's so helpful to have a bunch of people who know all of our work and kind of understand the stuff that we like to do and are aiming for, and be able to respond to that. But what it does mean is we have to be careful about I think about promising things.
Yep.
And that's not because like, you know, we're going to say something and then just decide on a whim not to do it. But I think I'm sure, as you know, like once something is out there, it's very hard to tell people that you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And not make people feel like something's been taken away from them. Because as we said in iterative development, like you start off with, I think I'm going to do this, and then you find that 20% of the time you can't do that. And that's not a negative thing. That's a really creative way of making something. But if somebody's heard about something in the 20% and they're really excited about it and you're not going to do it, then they'll obviously feel like, what, that's a real shame. I'm disappointed and I'm sad. Whereas actually like the emotion is hooray, like progress. And this person's feeling like, oh, sad. So I think the key for me with open development is like to make really sure what I know I can promise to you and to everyone else in the studio by a certain time, and be aware of the stuff that's a little bit more like up in the air.
Yeah. I think too, going back to the question before about how marketing and production works together, I, in this situation, act as a buffer to Lottie and the tech team, which would be a great band name. Because...
Well, I mean, our CTO, Henry, is a wonderful, like, steel pedal guitar, I think is the phrase.
See? So just hand out a few tambourines and you'll be good to go. I like this. But yeah, so it would filter up through the whole studio, basically, because it would go from the people that actually did the tech stuff to you and your planning, and then to me, because I know which bits as well might be a bit iffy and challenging, and since I deal with you guys every day, like I want to make sure that you're really happy and excited, and I don't want to get your hopes up about something we're not quite sure on too. So it's like a filtering process of information.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, sometimes just that translating aspect again, because we may say something that's super technical, but you'll have no idea what that means. But it could be something really cool, like how the locomotive moves, but we have like a special term for it. And also I think just like the specifics, or like the, what do you call it? Like the basic functionality of setting stuff up for something like early access probably affects our development schedule too.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like we're doing just one portion for EA.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
So that must be scheduling.
Yeah, so the way that we're doing that is we're trying to get as much of the mechanics in as possible, because the mechanics are the big thing that we really need feedback on. Like, I'm sure that people will have lots of thoughts about the content that they will see in the early access version of the game. But I think we're fairly confident that we know what we're doing with this writing. And that doesn't mean that like people aren't good if they're not in the writing team. What it means is that the writing team, I think, has a very like clear vision of the stories that they want to tell, and the feedback they're likely to get will be like that was mechanically buggy, or I didn't like that character, rather than I hate the way that you write, which like I think our writers are good enough. It's fine.
Yes, we're set on that.
Mechanics are a little bit more like abstract. They are an attempt to make the player do or feel something, like by enabling them to do something in the game. So it's kind of harder to judge if implementing a particular mechanic will have the impact on the player that you want it to. So that's really key for us to get feedback on early. So we're trying to get as much of that in as possible so we can give it to people in early access and really like potentially change a lot of things based on how people perceive it and play it.
Definitely.
And focusing on the one region only, the reach, will enable us to keep like the art burden and the writing burden as low as possible, so those guys aren't like dying. Because there's a lot of work there.
We like them to finish the game first.
We do, yeah.
That sounded terrible. I want them to live for a long, long time.
See, marketing, heart of ice.
It's fine. And I was thinking too, what you were saying also goes along with accessibility features and things like that.
Yes.
Because even if it's not something specifically to do with accessibility, there will be some ways that people use our game or play our game in a way that we would have never thought of before.
Yeah.
So doing it in that iterative process means that you guys can tell us about it, and then we can re-examine where we are and if there's something we could do to help.
Absolutely.
Cool. And so the difference between Sunless Sea and Sunless Skies, that's quite... I mean, there would be a few I don't know. I know we often, we're thinking about Sunless Sea and what we can improve on and what we want to feel different. Just earlier today, we were discussing the difference between how a boat moves versus how a locomotive moves, because somebody had asked us if the locomotives would be faster, for example. And even such a simple question like that, which, isn't a huge, like it's an important aspect of playing the game, but it's not a huge chunk of the actual game. Spurred our development team into like a huge conversation about what they want it to feel like and what should be different or not different. So I'm not sure if there's any specific big major differences unless you can think of some.
Well, I think we talked about this a lot, but combat is obviously something that we want to investigate a lot. We're aware of it being one of the weaker points of Sunless Sea. So we're going to try, I think, we're going to move away the most from Sunless Sea in terms of what combat is going to be like in Sunless Skies. But I think, honestly, the major difference in terms of production is, like, it's really unusual for us to have a game, well, we've never had a game before, that we're kind of bouncing off during production. Like, Sunless Sea was our first like PC game. Every choice we were making was kind of feeling our way in the dark. And we had a bunch of really smart people thinking about really smart things, which I think is why it was a successful game.
Definitely.
But people were kind of making their best guess, and it came together, and that's wonderful. But now we have Sunless Sea. We have had a bunch of people who've been through the cycle before, like just like physically themselves. They've been through a development cycle for a PC game. But we also now can say, well, we want Sunless Skies to feel X compared to Sunless Sea, because we know how that came across and we know how we did that. So that's extremely useful for us, because like even if like what we're trying to achieve is like not like is very different from Sunless Sea. From Sunless Sea, at least we have like a starting point in an existing game that's out there.
Definitely. I'm glad you tripped over. Wait, did I say sea or skies? Because I do that all the time.
The next game we make, I swear to God, it's going to be like Lightfold Perambulator or something. It's going to be the most different name.
Then we'll be fine.
Yes.
Hello, Indigo, by the way. And Miss Vales, you're welcome. I'm glad that somebody asked about that, because I don't think we ever get to chat about production versus marketing and how they work together. It's a lot of shouting. All right, so it's been our general 30 minutes of discussion, and whilst we could go on and on, I think that will probably be good for today, unless there's any sort of ending thoughts. Maybe you could say, what can people look forward to in the next sprint that we'll be talking about, which is dark matter.
How can you ask me that in the last moment of this
I can
sprint?
give you a brief reminder.
I don't need a reminder, Haley. It's all in here. It's also written down, definitely, loads of places.
Here's a giant spotlight for the very end of our podcast.
As I said, like, combat is basically what we're focusing on at the minute. We've started to get like a full game loop, which is super exciting. We can now play it. Yeah, Larkbus. You win, it's a good game. We started to get a full loop of like being able to fly around and interact with stories and dock at places, which enables us to like start actually testing some content in game, which is really nice. But mechanically, the big thing that we want to work out is all the bits and pieces of content, of combat, because there's loads of new pieces in there. It's pretty complicated. There's lots of different bits and pieces anyway in combat. Because you have to worry about like what can the player do, what can the enemies do, how does combat play out, what are the strategies you can employ, what are the weapons. Like, there's so many different parts.
Definitely.
So the next sprint is big about that. And yeah, that's kind of all I can say.
I think that's pretty juicy. I think a lot of people look forward to stuff like that. Especially since we said it's now one of the major differences between Sunless Sea and Sunless Skies.
We have been pretty like tight-lipped about it. So I think people will be very excited to see what we eventually throw at them.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that does it for the two of us today. But we'll be back. There was a long gap between this podcast and the last podcast, but that should improve. It was basically because Easter and a lot of unforeseen events stacked up together, but we should be back not next Friday, but the Friday after, and so on and so forth because of the sprint scheduling. So hopefully I will see you guys then, and we'll continue. So
lovely speaking to you.
Goodbye, Failbetter crew. Good luck guessing the secret marriage.